Next, we have Scott Goode with Nourishing Systems. He's going to tell us about the role of soil nourishment in nutrition quality of indigenous foods. Welcome, Scott.
Ever since plants first appeared on the land, they've depended on other organisms to convert the minerals and other nutrients in the soil into substances their roots could absorb. This is the same relationship that exists between algae and fungi that form the lichens we see in harsh environments today. As plants became more complex, they required new and different nutrients. As a result, plants grew to depend on ever more diverse community of soil-borne organisms to provide these nutrients. The roots of the plants developed not so much for a direct nutrient absorption, but as host sites for these symbiotic soil-borne organisms. Plants began to form ever larger canopies so that they could produce surpluses of sugars and proteins and enzymes to feed the life forms growing on and around their roots, the soil zone known as the rhizosphere. Up to 50% of these substances are released from the plant's roots to feed these soil-borne organisms. Soil-borne life forms in turn thrive on these added nutrients, but they're just the underpinnings for a cascade of organisms that create an integrated system, the soil food web. This system evolved through the eons to provide the support for plants and soil and the larger environment in ways that we are only just beginning to understand. What we have come to understand is that without this system to groom the soil, provide passages and storage spaces for moisture, and to maintain the balance of greenhouse gases, the system collapses, and then wastelands and climate change occur. Our ancestors understood this system because they had intimately observed it for thousands of years. As a result, they understood that food needed to be grown in integrated plant guilds. They also understood that seasons provided an opportunity for plant debris to be returned to the soil. By cultivating the land by hand, they saw the effect of their actions in the soil itself and the creatures that inhabited the soil. They saw the effect of other creatures like bear and elk and bison on the land and how significant those actions were to the fertility and vegetation of the region. They understood the role of fire in managing the land and engaged it as an ally, just as the cultures of Egypt and Mesopotamia understood the role of flooding and seasonal wetlands. They embraced them as sources of nutrient enrichment. They understood that every process in creation has a secret and a treasure to share. Just as many are facing the results of misunderstanding these relationships, researchers are beginning to explore the remarkable and beautiful details of what has been forgotten and ignored. Ironically, science is now awakening the cult of technology to the wisdom of the cultures that so long sought to destroy. We've come to realize that our health and nutrition is based on a complex interaction of a web of ecology called the microbiome. Health comes not from sterilizing the world around us, but by culturing a complex symbiosis with the world that nurtured our very evolution. Research is showing that the complex system of organisms in the rhizosphere is exactly like the case of the human biome. Furthermore, it's clear that these organisms can transport nutrients from distant locations that aren't even accessible to the plant's own roots. A well-known soil chemist demonstrated that virtually all soils contain the necessary minerals to grow nutrient-dense food. What is missing is not the nutrients. It's the soil organisms that release and transport these nutrients to the plant. Mechanical cultivation destroys the ecology that these organisms need in order to do their part. Guilds of plants do not compete with each other. They instead specialize in uptake of specific nutrients as a function of their specialized roots. With the help of specific soil organisms, nutrients from plants are shared with the others in its guild. The three sisters are not just companions, they're actually feeding each other. Our ancestors knew how to construct these guilds, how to intercrop, companion plant, how to create annual successions of plants that ensure health and protection and nutrient density of the foods that they grew. They knew this through thousands of years of intimate relationship with these plants. Through the use of cultivation techniques like in-ground composting systems of the Terra Preta cultivation in the southern hemisphere, the chinampas of central Mexico, and the Menuman cultivation in this part of the world, we grew our food to create ever richer soil and protect our climate at the same time. Through the study of the few indigenous growing systems that remain, archaeological studies of civilizations long past, and the work of organic renegades in soil science, a rediscovery of our indigenous food production is emerging. Terra Preta soils, for instance, are generated by growing crops like sunflowers that are harvested before the seeds in the flowers are mature. The stalks, flowers, and leaves are placed in a trench that become the walkways between crop beds of coming seasons. The sunflowers start the Terra Preta soil formation process. Nutrients in the crop debris at season's end are continuously cycled back into the soil, where they are quickly available to next season's crops. Nitrogen is restored each winter by growing nitrogen-fixing cover crops right in the growing spaces where the crops will be planted in the spring, and harvested cover crop placed in the walkway to compost. Not only do these systems create deep, rich soils, researchers have shown that if the type of fungally dominated soil production is practiced on as little as 16% of the planet's arable land, it would sequester more carbon than is put into the atmosphere by all human activity every year, and engages the same mechanism that has kept greenhouse gases in check for eons. We can solve the challenges of providing nutrient-rich foods, restoring the planet's soils, counteracting climate change, all with the same simple solution. We have the understanding, the tools, and the people. All we need is the leadership of people like you. Thank you.